overcoming depression. So in this video, I want to demonstrate kind of states of awareness, or, a magical thing in life is to be able to look at something from a different perspective. And when we do this, we can generate a different sense of awareness. Now, depression itself is all it is just very dense awareness. It's when we can't see something from a greater perspective. We're just stuck in a very low vibrational existence. And that, this may be caused by many things. It could be caused from a traumatic experience. It could be caused from, there's infinite potentialities in this lifetime, and it doesn't matter how someone or someone gets into that low vibrational existence. The truth is that it doesn't matter how we got there, but when we're there, all we know is that existence. All we can feel is that existence. And the magical thing, at least about this lifetime, is that we need to feel in general. We need to feel, because if we can't feel, even though the feelings we may be experiencing aren't great, we have to understand that the very basic blessing of this human experience is that we can feel. Because as long as we can feel, we have one up. We have one up on this system. We have one up on this life. Because we have to understand, it's not our feelings which are negative. It's not our feelings, although we may feel bad, although we may feel pain, although we may feel sorrow, guilt, we may feel these things. But the truth is that as long as we can feel, we can move forward. The mind itself is the main, it's the dominant force through these lower states of frequency. What the mind does is that when we feel bad, the mind looks down on these feelings and says, it criticizes. It just constantly bombards. It almost uses our feelings against us and that's what the mind does, is that the mind kind of looks down on us and then dictates and criticizes and judges and basically closes us into like a ball and basically tries to keep us there. The mind itself, when we're in these kind of very dense states of being, very low vibrational, when we're living a very low vibration, the mind is like, it kind of wants to hold us in place. And it's very interesting when we go in and start to understand, like, why would the mind want to keep us there? And that's not going to be, we're not going to cover that in this video because that's a whole different video. But for ourselves, when we're living this kind of low vibrational existence, we know that the mind is like the main, like, kind of like, whatever you want to call it, but the mind kind of like holds us in place. It kind of keeps us in this very low state of frequency by like criticizing, judging, and this is the magic, and this is the true magic, is that our feelings are more powerful than our mind. Because once we understand that the mind, we can't trust our minds to help us, because at the end of the day, the mind was probably the reason why we got into this low state of awareness, low state of existence, low vibrating, low energy, kind of very negative, very, the mind is generally how we got here. And it's up to us to come back to our feelings and acknowledge our feelings and trust that our feelings are pretty much the only thing that is going to get us out of this existence, this state, because it's our feelings which have power. When the mind is, we can't gain control of our minds until we gain control of our feelings, because this is how it works. is that the mind wants us to feel helpless. The mind wants us to feel, useless. The mind wants us to feel, basically helpless is a great word. Because as long as we listen to the mind, we will stay a victim to ourselves. When we can come back to our feelings and say, okay, you know what? I do feel shit. I do feel pain. I feel basically shit because, at the end of the day, we could go on about how we feel. But if we're not feeling great, then we need to come back to our feelings and say, within our feelings, we can implement changes, and we can start to trust our feelings to generate changes, because this is how it works. When we do something from our emotional state, our emotional existence, and we start to work with this emotional existence, we start to bypass the mind. We start to cut off the mind from who we want to change and become into. If we can't make these changes within our feelings, if we're doing something, if our existence is based upon something, and this existence is continuing to create this feeling, we won't be able to change our base frequency unless we start to implement and make decisions from our base frequency, our emotional self. So when we start to change ourselves for our emotional self, rather than, we bypass the mind and we start to move forward within self-growth and self-awareness of oneself. We start to bypass the mind, because the mind, it wants to be, the mind is what got us here in the first place when we're feeling very low. And the mind will always, and this is the magic, is that when we actually start to do things for ourselves, not for the mind, not for this, image of who we should become, but literally just for the emotional self. When we start to do things for our emotional self, for our feelings, we start to learn and change the way we feel. And we will do this. As soon as we come back to our feelings, realize that our feelings aren't negative. It's just our mind perceiving the negativity. We start to come back to ourselves and start to trust in our feelings and start to try and generate different feelings. We will ultimately learn to implement a shift of frequency. And when we constantly go moving with this frequency shift and starting to feel and feel differently, start to grow differently, we're starting to love differently, we're starting to perceive this reality in totally different ways. It's all we're doing is changing our emotional self, the way we're perceiving this reality, the way that, because the mind will always be the mind, it will always be there, but it's who we are which is changing within our emotional self. We're starting to grow, we're starting to learn to love, we're starting to learn to literally feel happy. All we need to do is focus on how we're feeling and learn to accept our feelings, learn to trust our feelings, and learn to make changes with our feelings. Listen to ourselves and learn to make changes, and learning to accept. Acceptance is something that is completely underrated in our society. We feel like we shouldn't accept something, but as long as we can't accept something, it will always haunt us in different ways. It'll always drain our energy, and it will always keep us in place, keep us believing in certain feelings. And we can't truly heal ourselves until we accept everything that has happened in our lives has brought us to this moment. And when we can start to accept our reality, we can start to heal our reality, we can start to listen to our feelings, we can start to make changes and move forward with our feelings. Depression is all it is just a low frequency base of energy. It's our awareness in this lifetime. It's just a very low vibrational awareness, and our mind kind of holds us in this awareness, which is interesting. But it's our emotional self which which is going to get us out of here. And yeah, and that's the beauty of life, is that when we start to move with this emotional self, we can and we will generate change. We will generate growth. And when we do this and we start to generate growth and change, we can just simply be grateful for our feelings. And we can eventually we can understand that without feelings we would be helpless, because we would only be left with the mind and the dictatorship of the mind. The feelings aren't negative. It's generally the voices in our heads which are kind of just like creating this emotional feeling of pain and suffering. It's not our feelings which are negative. It's the perception. It's our perception of whatever's engaging in our lifetime, which is creating this negative impulse of emotion. We need to be able to come back to the negative impulse of emotion, accept whatever's creating it, and learn to come back and listen to our emotional self, and learn to heal our emotional self, and learn to re-love and love our emotional self. And once we start to do this, we'll literally just expand back into who we can truly become, into an existence which is love, which is happiness, which is joy, which is positivity, which is creativity, which is gratitude, which is honor, which is bliss. We have the infinite potential in this lifetime to feel everything, to feel infinity itself, to grow within infinity itself. This lifetime doesn't need to be painful. However, the pain is crucial to learn from. It's crucial to unite within, so we can grow within it, so we can use it to be grateful, to be love, to be happiness. Without pain, we wouldn't feel at all. And it's not the feelings which are negative, it's our perception which is manipulating us to feel the negativity.